Hi, my name is John McFetrich, and these are a couple of videos so that I put together of showing how we might save the photos from our iOS iPhone library into an Azure SQL database. And then we're going to look at a couple of simple applications that will consume these images. And the first of these is a I use Swift, of course, in Xcode on my Mac, and built this simple application that that caches these images and then lazy loads them. And the second of these applications is a very simple JavaScript application which consumes these same photos. So if I hit the download button, we see the images being loaded from the same SQL database. The first thing we'll take a look at is the Azure parts here. So let's get started. Now we're going to start by building up the server side here, which is going to be hosted in Azure. And of course, this could have been equally well hosted in one of the shared services like WinHost. In fact, I'll probably switch there because I'm really in. I think Azure might be a little overpriced for the individual developer, but it does have some really good capabilities, which I will try and show you. But I'm not going. I don't intend this to be an Azure tutorial. I'm just going to hit some of the high points. So the first thing I do is I create my web API my web API and the project and choose ASP.NET web application and whatever location you want. Hit the OK button. Make sure we have web API selected, and we want MVC and web API. Now, I'm not going to start this application from scratch. I'm going to now switch to my finished application, and so you don't have to painfully look at what I'm doing. But first of all, I want to share with you some of the Azure parts here. If we click here on this is the integration with Visual Studio is very good, and some with my Server Explorer, I'm able to look at my app service, and my little application is being hosted as an app service. And if I click on this, I can go to the management portal, and the management portal will, let me just move this over here. In the management portal, where you can see my URL is here. Now one has to be careful about the pricing model here, and I warn you. Notice that one is free and small. Make sure yours is free and small, because if you want to test out Azure, they've got about a 12-month free trial, but be careful because the subscription says pay as you go. And if this is not free and small, this pay as you go will you can soon build up a $200 a month bill, which I did, and they were very nice about backing that out when I discovered this wasn't set. So that was really all I needed to do there, and then of course I've got a SQL database here somewhere, oh, here it is here on this side, SQL databases, and we'll see we've got one here called students, and students, now notice here in students is the pricing tier. Again, be careful with, this is standard S0. If it's anything higher than S0, then you will get billed, and you're not going to be happy like I wasn't. So, students, this just again shows you more information on the pools and the pricing model here and your usage. There's just so much information. I really like how Microsoft has integrated the Azure services into Visual Studio. And so if I click on Server Explorer here, I can drill down and get pretty well everything I need about this GACA services, and including all the files that make up my project, and the log files. We can even look at the log files if we're debugging using some of the trace statements that are available. But there's an alternative to debugging, which I'll show you, which is really nice. So even here, and you can even look at our SQL databases. If I click on students, I can open this in this SQL Explorer, and here we can see all of they see are all of the rows in our table, and see how simple it is. We just have a tag, and then we have the bits that make up the image itself. So my web application is going to use Entity Framework code first, and again, this is not a tutorial on Entity Framework. I'm just going to hit some of the high spots. I defined my model class here, and simple because it has an ID and a name which I can tag these images, and then I have the bits, which is a byte array. Now I'm using I've got an attribute here of JSON ignore because when I do my original get, I only want to return the ID and the name, so we can engage in lazy loading. And most of the key functionality then I take and I add to my class info controller class, and this is what we will dive into to see how we move the data, how we move the images from my iPhone into my Azure application. In order to get the images from my iPhone into my Azure database, the key method that we're going to implement in our controller is media upload. Now, this is a post, and it'll allow us to handle a multi-part form data in which we can receive multiple types of content, and each of these will be part of a named value collection. And this is an asynchronous method, and the first thing we do is we create our DB context, and then we look and make sure that it's a multipart. And then we issue an asynchronous read as multipart async, and this will read all the body parts in the my multipart message, and will produce a set of HTTP content instances. And this is what this provider is. So, and once we do this, we want to for each through this the provider context and look for our tag information and the image. Now, if it's the name tag, then we're just going to do a read as string, another async call, which will just take that content and we'll assign it to our student.name. And then if it's an image, we're going to serialize the content as a stream, and then from this stream we're going to create in a .NET image object, and then create this memory stream and save the image into the memory stream as a JPEG. And then from this we will extract an array and assign it to the byte array that is part of my student object. And then finally we'll just take and add this to our data contents and save the changes, so things get saved in our database. Later I'm going to show how we're going to put a breakpoint here, and we're going to run this code I'm going to issue the multipart post from my Swift application, and we'll see how we can use the debugger and just step through this code to have a better understanding of how it works. So now let's take a look at the my Swift application that is going to use this multi-part form data post mechanism to send our photos over to our Azure service. Um, and I've got a really simple, I guess it's difficult to make this more simple. You can see I'm not a designer. This UI will simply go off to my photo library and let's just choose. I'm using the simulator here, so of course I only have access to a few photos, not my actual photo library. And then I choose a photo, and then I hit the post button. So it's simple. But let's take a look at, let's go over here and again take a look at our project. I'm not going to go through building this from scratch. I'm just going to, it has a simple one view controller, and the view controller.swift looks like this. I have a couple of outlets for those two buttons. One the name, and the other will contain the image itself, and then of course the post button um, will and will be an IB action. So this is a UI view controller, and also this class extends the image picker controller delegate, so I can use my image picker. Lots of examples of how to do this, and the navigation controller. Um, so the first thing we did, well, we want to set up our image picker. We're just going to create it, and on our did load, we want to make sure that the image picker after we've created it, we set its delegate to self, so that all the interactions with the image picker will occur through this class. When we when the user gets the photo, uh, hits the photo button, up comes we see the image picker, and it'll be the type will be the photo library, and then we just present it, and we wait for the user to do something like either dismiss it or to pick an image from our library. When they're finished picking, we will go into this function, and from the info parameter, which notice the string any, we're going to cast to a UI image, and if we're able to do that, if that cast is successful, then we will assign the image view dot image will be set to this picked image, and then we just dismiss the control. So let's just see what happens when the user hits the post button. They've selected a photo from our photo library, and then we hit the post button, and then we're in our function. Let's change this. Okay, so now we're in the right project, and first thing we check, make sure that they filled a name, because we want to assign a tag to this image for our database. We're going to set up a dictionary of parameters. In this case, we only have one, which is the name, and we assign that value test. Then I'm going to gather some information about this image, and which is the photo they just selected. And in here, we just we're going to set the MIME type to JPEG, and the file name to, I left Kyle's name in here, and most importantly, we're going to take and we're going to form a JPEG representation of the bits in this photo, and then just return to the caller. And now we're going to set. We need to we're going to set our target URL, which of course is going to be the media upload method in our Azure server, so that we can take this multi-part form and save the data to our database, and we form a request and set the method to post. Now, the with these multi-part, I'm just going to show you a comment down here. We have to form a body of the form boundary, and the boundary has to be unique, and then the content disposition form data with the name, and in this we're going to have two. We're going to have the image or the tag for the image, and then the actual bits, and we use this little function here to generate a unique name, because we're going to use a UUID. Uh, so we so generate boundary will let our boundaries. So we'll set up a boundary string of this form boundary, and this is the unique UUID. Then we're going to form, and we need to start to fill in some values of the request, and we're going to set the content type to be multi-part form data, and the boundary equal to the string we just created. Then we have to create our body, and in here, just jump in here. We will form this boundary, these two parts, and we step in here. We look at the parameters that were passed in. We only get one, and this will be our key, will be the name, and the value will be test. Because we're going to give this is the tag, which we're going to give the image, and then we grab the bits. We have to now grab the bits of the photo, and we have to assign them and append them to the body. And then we delimitate our boundary, and we go back to our color, and we set this return data body we just set to put it into the request, and then we make we use session data task to do the post to Azure, and we have this we have this in place function here, our closure, and we're going to run to this breakpoint, and we should return 0, our response we should have, and we do, so there was no errors, and we have shipped our data over to the Azure server. So I'm now running this multi-part Swift application on my iPhone itself. So I've got access to the actual library on my photo library on my phone. And let's just set up a breakpoint in Azure so we can see what's happening. We attach our debugger to the to our Azure web app, and then we're going to hit the, and this really is, I love being able to have the capability of doing this. So then we hit our post on our, and from our Swift application, I've accessed one of the images in my photo library. The first thing I'm mixing now, of course, I'm in the media upload web API call, because that's what I called from my Swift code. The first thing I make sure this request is a multi-part, and then I make this read as multi-part call, and this is an async call, which is just going to give us access to the multiple parts and make up this message, and these will be returned, and access will be through this provider. And now I want to, for each through this and get the parts I'm interested in. And there's only two in this case. One is the tag, and the tag I will read as issue a read a string, another async call, and the name that I assigned for my Swift code is old. And then I'm going to look at I want to get the bits that make up my photo, and I read these as a stream, and another asynchronous call, and I just assign it to a stream. And then I want to create a .NET image this from this, and then I create a memory stream, and I save the bits to the stream as JPEG. And now I have access to the bits that I want, and I assign them to my class, my student class. And of course, student class is real simple. I only have two members, old, and which is my tag, and then the byte array that makes up my photo. So now I've got what I need, and I'm using it, Entity Framework, and the only thing I need to do is to add the student to my class infos, and then save my changes, and Bob's your uncle. This now the photo is saved in my database. Okay. So this is how we get our photos from our photo library on our iPhone into a Azure database. Now we're going to look at methods on how we retrieve these, and we want to retrieve them ultimately in a lazy fashion. So I'm going to have a get. This get is simply returns the JSON that represents the items in my database minus the image itself. In other words, I'm just going to return, because we have that we have the JSON ignore on our bits. This is not going to be returned. So, and here is the beauty of what Azure gives us, is that I can set a breakpoint here and debug this not just locally, but I can debug it off my server. So if I go to my Server Explorer and I right-click on GACA Services, I can say Attach Debugger. Now, a debugger is being attached to that instance running in Azure. This is not running locally. So now, if I go over here to Fiddler, and I'm going to do a get, and I'm executing my get. So now we've hit the breakpoint on my server in Azure, and I wanted a hierarchy on my JSON, so I just added this category. It's not necessary, but it's just to give me some hierarchy. And then what I do, I just retrieve the list and of items that are in my database, and then I return these, and this of course will be returned as JSON. So if we look here to the we will see my name, my category, and then all my students here with IDs, and of course noticing that we are not returning the image. And similarly, if I want to get back the image for a specific item, I just go back over here to my composer, and I want get. Notice my parameters 1, and this will tell me I want to return the image for the first item in my database. Hit the execute, and now we're in the get image. And this will take as a parameter. We'll take the ID, and we use this to I knew up my data context, and then I just retrieve the specific item that I want from my database. And now I'm going to create this memory stream using these bits. And I'm going to set, because I've got, and my response message, I'm going to set the content type will be image JPEG, and I'm going to set the content to the memory stream we've just created. So we now return the image is returned over to our to the caller, and now we see the image. And the advantage of this method is that I'm returning, it's two steps. I'm returning the IDs, and then I'm going to have specific calls for the image themselves, so we can lazy load these.